Happy Friday, Sullivan World. Good to see you all again. We made it to the end of another week. I was actually updating my calendar over here a few seconds ago, and I realized that we're almost at the end of April, which is kind of crazy. We started a bunch of these Navigating the Unknown series, mid-March or so, somewhere around there. So anyway, it's been about a month. We've been doing these conversations on a regular basis. We've got another one coming up here for you. Today, we've got two really good friends coming on, and we're going to be talking a lot about like project-based learning, experiential-based learning, which is a just niche that I love to dive into. So super excited to introduce you to two friends. We've got specifically joining us today, good friend of mine, Victor, who runs an organization called Experience Institute, and another new friend that I actually just met maybe last week or so. Going to get to meet her a little bit more on this call, Monica from the Hudson Lab School, and each of them also have a whole bunch of other projects that they're involved in, so I'm sure we will have a chance to dive into that on our call today. So as we're letting people join on, we always kick these calls off with a little bit of a tool that we like to use in the Sullivan community. And because we're talking about experiential learning, and we're bringing on especially one of my friends who is a master when it comes to designing toolkits and guidebooks and things like that for experiential learning, I thought I'd actually show you what Victor has been up to over the years. Victor, this is your teaser before we get a chance to chat here on here. So I actually first met Victor, man, I don't even know when this came out. Victor, you'll have to correct me. Maybe 2011, 12, somewhere in that range. But Victor got a lot of attention for a project he was doing called the Leap Year Project, which is basically this thing he just put out into the ether saying, hey, who wants to do 12 one-month leaps, right? These are like things that people wanted to take a bit of a leap on in their own personal journey of some capacity and document that and share that with a bit of a bigger community. And so they produced this super cool book called The Leap Year Project of a bunch of people that were sort of stepping out of their comfort zone, trying different things. The book talks, in the very beginning, talks about this idea of learning to risk and then risking to learn. And I have a feeling that's going to be a bit of a theme of our conversation here a little bit today. This idea that when we're navigating the unknown, sometimes it involves a lot of risk, and you have to step into spaces that you're not familiar with, and you're sort of learning as you go. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. That was when Victor first popped on my radar. Since then, he has been quite busy. Here's another one of his little tools that we've used at different Sullivan events in the past. This is called oh my gosh, I can't even remember, the Leap Folio or something like that. Man, Victor's going to have to correct me on a lot. Really, the fun part about this little toolkit here is that it has a custom Sharpie. And I don't know how he pulled this off. This is my first question for him when he jumps on the call, is how do you get a custom Sharpie made? But anyway, it's a little Leap folio kit to help you think about taking big steps on your learning journey, whether that's in a professional or traditional setting or on a very untraditional kind of chart your own adventure type of thing. So there's this whole little book, and then most recently he started a new deck of cards. If you've been following this series, we kind of gave you a glimpse of this about 2 weeks ago. It's called What's Worth Doing, a really interactive kind of card deck they can dive into. So anyway, the folks we got coming on here like to get their hands dirty. They like when learning comes to life, and so we will have quite a good conversation. So as you're jumping in, feel free to add comments, questions down in the comment section or in the question bar, and we will be sure to ping them over to both Victor and Monica. So first that I want to bring onto the call here is Victor with the Experience Institute. This is sort of the umbrella that houses a lot of his work, but it's got everything from, I believe, children's books to the tools that I just showed you. So it's quite a wide umbrella of some of the stuff that he's got going on. So let me invite Victor onto the call here, and we will kick it off. Victor, what's going on?
What up? Man? How's it going?
Good, dude. How are you doing?
I'm well.
Man, it's been, 3 days since we last chatted?
I know. I've missed you.
I know. I feel like we've gone years, and now we've talked like twice.
I know. Yeah.
Pretty great.
Yeah. It's like two, playing on two different sides of the country, but then, coming together for like all-star games or, that's, some sort of reunion of sorts of all these folks. It's fun to see you and fun to hang out for this.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining these Sullivan calls that we've been going on. They've
Yeah.
really just been a chance for us to catch up with friends of ours that are doing good work. And I think in the Sullivan world, and probably in your world, we really value, in-person gatherings where learning comes to life. And
I
so
know.
this has been our substitute for that over the last couple weeks. So
I know. I appreciate it.
yeah, totally. So for those on the call that maybe don't know who you are, and you can correct the little bit of a butchered intro that I just did with that, random tools that I have of Victor's laying around my house.
Sure.
What have you been up to over the last? I mean, it's probably been about a decade that you've been doing this work. What have you been up to, kind of leading up to COVID, and then I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about how that has kind of changed your path a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. For 8 years. Yeah. So look, the story starts with just being frustrated with higher education. It costs a lot of money. It's not it wasn't my style of learning. And, but it wasn't meant to be a sort of middle finger to higher education as much as I was just kind of curious, what are the alternative paths, to achieve some of the things that higher education was achieving one certain way, like our formal sort of institutions. And so I was working with middle school and high school students wanting to get an MBA. Obviously MBAs weren't my style. I had done everything I was supposed to do to get into a good school. I got my GMAT scores up, talked to all the right people, networked. And when I was looking at the options and really looking at what a traditional degree gets you, there were a couple things, right? So I wanted the practical skills. Like there were tools that I wanted to learn. There was credibility that would come with going to like a Northwestern or University of Chicago or insert brand name. There was a wider network. So I wanted to meet other people who are building social enterprises, or I wanted to meet some people who had been in the industry for a long time, and I wanted to rub shoulders with those people. And then eventually I wanted a new career. Like I wanted to jump into something more entrepreneurial and in the marketplace. I was working with middle school and high school students in the church context, a ministry context. So, if you think about higher education, it's getting you to that end. So practical tools, a wider network, credibility, employment, maybe some self-discovery as well. Those are all endpoints that you could design different paths to get to. And an MBA is just one particular path, a well-charted path and a societally respectful path, or a respectable path. But what else could we do? And so that was the impetus for what I'm doing 9 years later.
Yeah.
And that I was 25 when I first had those questions, and was really just kind of like, luckily I was in the position where I had a pretty wide network of people I could start talking to about alternative ways of doing this. Most people were like, yeah, this is cute, but like maybe you should think about doing your own thing. It was 2011, and 2011 was not a banner year or anything, but 2012 was a leap year, actually on the calendar. Happens every 4 years, there's an extra day. So kind of cool to give if I was going to design my own thing, give it a title. I thought that also, from a guy who's a communications guy, having a title makes it a little more legit if you're talking to people. And then it was like, how do I structure it? And if I wanted all of those things, I felt like experiences would be the way to go. Like I want to work on problems. I want to help people solve something. So the couple of things that I knew I had to figure out was, how do I fund it? And how do I get those projects? So funding was writing. I could do a subscription to my weekly writings around what I was learning and just do it for 12 to 18 months. So $10 a month, 12 to 18 months, find a couple hundred people. Huge ask. But I had a few months to get that going. So I got that wheel engine going. How do I design the year? Well, one of my friends was like, there could be something interesting about doing 12 jobs in 12 months. Like, it was Seth Kravitz, this dear friend of mine. And we started joking around about go work at the aquarium, go do dirty job style kind of stuff. And then eventually it was like, oh, let's hone it in a little bit more around design, business, social impact, around the MBA topics that you were curious about. Okay, so all that started moving forward. And then next thing you know, I'm in the middle of 2012 working at an architecture firm or traveling to China and I got so many no's. Not a lot of people are willing to let a kid work in their space for a month, but I got better at learning how to ask people about what would you do with 20 extra hours a week or 30 extra hours a week or a month of staff time, what would you work on? And everyone has an answer. And then if you can ask that to a few staff members, you find a theme of something that was really interesting in the company. So just did that again and again and again. And then there was the whole human side, like the sort of connection to that community that I was writing to. How do I bring them into it? How do I ask them to like take leaps of their own and all of that, which was managing that side was also a learning experience in and of itself.
And you have been one of the most consistent writers that I follow, I think, with your Wednesday words. I don't know how, has that consistently gone from that point all the way until today, or were there
it started
radar?
It started a little bit later. I started it like 2014. Okay. January of 2014.
Wow. Gotcha.
Yeah. And it's really funny. I'm actually reevaluating if I'm going to continue doing it the way I've been doing it. I'll probably keep doing Wednesday words for a long time, but like if I'll continue the way. But it started with just like 15, 20 friends and wanting to write more. That was it.
Right.
Like the first, I actually used to post them just at victorsaad.com, and you could go back and see like some of the first postings. Like there was poetry, there was prose, there was like sort of like just random musings, and I would just send them in an email to like 15, 20 friends. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. Like I should see if anyone else wants to read these. And now there's like, several thousand people, and not that they all open and read every single one, but it's like, it's got a different sort of pressure point now. Like how do you stay vulnerable, but also like teach people? It's not just about Victor. It's also like what like tools I can give to people that might be helpful, or ways to update people about what EI is working on too, so.
Right. Yeah, it's I find it funny how many people I talk to in this space, the social impact, social change space, right? You were like set out on this journey to find a career path, and then your career ended up being helping other people find how to craft that same journey for themselves, right? It's just like really weird semi-meta approach to it.
Yeah, we talk about like at EI is like, okay, we do career design and career skills, like. And it was like, those were the things that I was looking for. So I was wanting to design my career, young buck, like trying to figure out where I fit in the world. And then I wanted to grow in particular like arenas specific to storytelling or design thinking or how to run a business. Like, and so essentially EI does those two things. Yeah.
So let me get my most pressing question because I've never asked you, but how did you design your own Sharpie? Because this is a very important question that I've been holding for many years.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I didn't know it was that important to folks. I do love that Sharpie. Actually, I think, oh my gosh, I do. I have one of them right here.
It's great.
I love it. No, I mean, you can customize them, and it's not a magic story. Except, I mean, I thought about making up a story about how I met the founder of Sharpie, and I had to get him a little tipsy one night and convince him to let me do it, but it didn't happen. It was just, there's a way to, it's possible. I think you have to do a minimum order of however many, but it's no different than like, doing a mug or a coffee cup or whatever.
Things I aspire to have my own Sharpie one day in my life. So
hey, I mean, co-starters, like there should be a co-starter Sharpie, though. I don't know if that's the most important thing for co-starters. I feel like a journal or something else would be like, but yeah, Sharpie could definitely be in your future.
Right. I just get my head locked on things. So now that I know the answer to that, the other less important questions, one of the things that I'm really curious about, right, is like we're in this super pivotal time with higher education having to radically rethink things. Like, I can't imagine a time where suddenly an entire industry, I mean, there are many industries, but higher ed in particular, is like, what do we do moving forward? I'm curious, what conversations have you been a part of? What are you hearing? Where do you hope things might move in a certain direction? Because, right, this disrupted everything. So for folks like yourself and I that help rebuild systems and imagine new futures, this is like a really fun time to kind of dream into.
Yeah, so, there are a couple things that I've been noodling on. One is this idea that like universities shouldn't think about themselves as four-year institutions anymore, and really think about themselves as like learning hubs that students can like circle in and out of. If anyone has followed the Stanford 2025 project from a couple years ago, they called this looping, this idea that you would have a budget of time over the course of maybe, I don't know, say 6-8 years to use on campus. So you could loop in for your first couple of years, do a lot of, and there were a couple of other like strategies or thoughts, that they had synthesized from a bunch of research. But like one idea was to get rid of this idea of freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then do activate, calibrate, elevate. And activation would be like you trying to like, no, is it activate? No, calibrate, activate, elevate. So calibrate would be the first one. And that would be the one where you're like trying to figure out, well, what am I even interested in? So you do a lot of short classes and then you leave and go work in the world for a bit. And then you come back, you're like, okay, I've done some work on this. I really do think I want to do this thing. So then activate is like, I'm going to go study all the courses around this particular area. And then you leave and then you come back and you're like, okay, not only do I want to do this thing, I have a point of view of what I want to build in the world, like my perspective on this thing. And I really need to learn how to do that next. And so then you stay and spend that time. But I think like, if this happens where universities don't meet in the fall, which I don't think they will. Don't quote me on that. But if like a lot of signs point to this thing flaring up again in the fall, it would be a huge liability if universities were part of spreading that thing. So yeah, one of the wise things we should do until there's a vaccine is probably not bring 30,000 students to the same place in large lecture halls and campuses, like, and then send them back home to their parents. Like that's just probably isn't the wise thing to do. But if it were to happen, I'm sure there'll be some contingencies. So for all the college presidents who are watching, I'm not trying to make the decision for you. I just let's just call it what it is, that this might have to happen. So the other thing to think about is like, if you can't obviously do looping in the next 6 months, because that's a whole different system structure or a structure change, is to set up a proper sort of gap quarter, gap semester coaching system, which is what we're doing at Stanford. So like Stanford, we call it design summer right now, but there's an on-ramp on how do you actually apply, like get all of your story, your skills, your abilities into an easily shareable way or format, which is a mix of LinkedIn, portfolio, practice on how to interview, those kinds of things. Then learn how to navigate talking to people about what you could do during a gap quarter semester. What problems could you solve? Teach people how to actually get into the world, into like short-term projects. And then we've also built a piece of software, just a really simple piece of software that helps companies post projects, alums of the school, and students to apply for those projects. So they have a foot in the door in all these different places to actually start gaining experience. And there are projects that range from 1 week all the way to 8 weeks. So that's been one play, is like, think about what could happen if your university set up a sort of system for students to go get experience. At Berkeley, what we're doing is actually more of a longer term stint with one company as your next step after college. But again, similar kind of play. Students do a little bit of coursework around a specific skill set. They work together, get to know their instructors, understand how the skills can be applied in the real world, then get 3 months of work. In this case, it's remote work because of the situation, the pandemic, but they're working full time on these teams for 3 months. Hugely valuable if you've never done that, especially to learn how to work remotely. So I think universities have to be thinking about what that off-ramp is from the classroom into the real world. And before, it was left to one subset to the university, career centers, or maybe other little pockets around the campus. And now it's like the whole university has to orient themselves as not just an on-ramp and a landing place, but a better off-ramp as well. And every department, every professor, every counselor has to be thinking about, how is a student going to like leave and then hopefully come back, and leave and come back, and it's just a system shift.
Right. And so the thing that fascinates me, and I see this as so many people are moving to the remote like workspace. There's this like culture of when you work together or when you learn together in groups, there's this like natural accountability, right? People know what you're up to. They're peering over your shoulders. They're seeing the output of your work. And in a remote, like independent freelance space, right, there's a lot of autonomy that you're kind of setting your own mile markers and checkpoints. And so when suddenly everybody moved to working from home by themselves, all these Zoom calls popped in, and people are like virtually now like looking over your shoulder to make sure you're getting things done. And there's like this element of trust that I think is so critical to working on your own that people haven't fully embraced that. And I'm curious, because if universities are going to have to move into a space of like letting people design their experiences and go out and see what happens. How do we ensure that there's an element of trust as people are self-directing those pieces? And then what tools are we giving them to be able to like track, you know, really significant metrics and impact along the way, so that they can come back and say, yeah, here's actually what I did during that time. But and there's such a disconnect there when, you know, we have a higher education system that's like, check the boxes, right? Do these things to get this grade. Self-directed experiential learning doesn't really happen in that way. And so I'm curious how that transition is going to happen over the next couple of months as
Yeah,
universities.
that's a great question. I mean, the element of trust is big, and you're seeing a lot of jokes, I think, and memes about how people are navigating working from home and like what they're really doing, or,
Right.
but you're also seeing a lot of people step it up. Like I never stop working because my work is always in front of me, and you have the whole gamut, the whole spectrum in between there. I mean, again, one of the things like the sort of joy that I'm experiencing of like being on both sides of things. So like again, career design and then career skills, is that on the career skills side, we're leading a bunch of workshops for companies to learn how to work better remotely. So we have one for individuals, we have one for managers, we have one for leaders on pushing through adversity and resilience. But the ones around, everything from like setting up your learning space to how do you collaborate well over whether it's Microsoft Teams or Slack and Asana. How do you use the tools that are out there to connect? Zoom. How do you take care of yourself as well? Like, what are the tools that you can use to like create a sense of connection with others? And the rhythms and all. We have these courses on this side, and it feels like there should be almost a meld at some point. Like we need to teach students how to learn remotely and a little bit of how to work remotely too. So like, our instructors now almost like the same stuff I'm teaching to my managers about, giving and receiving feedback, boosting morale, doing short snippets of trainings, doing Monday stands, like these like skills and practices. Should these like now get folded into how you instruct? And should students learn how to use those tools? And you know what I'm saying? Like, I know there's all sorts of LMS tools, but I just wonder about like thinking about a student as I don't know, like treating them as some sort of now hybrid of like work, study, student, that where they're actually needing to be trained like they're working, even when they're in class. And so I don't know. I'm just sort of spitballing with you a little bit, but I can imagine that would be really helpful for a student. Here's how you stay present. Here's how you check in. Here's how you ask for help. Here's when to ask for help. Here are some basic norms around email, project management tools, asking for, asking for support, like just walking through some of that. Like, how do you be a good sort of worker, in this day and age? It seems like that would be really helpful also for the classroom.
Totally. So within the Sullivan community, right, we've got 70 or so different universities. And so for folks that are jumping into the call now or watch us later, I'm curious, in your realm with Experience Institute, I imagine that the last month has been just a shock to a lot of people, right? They are just trying to do whatever they can to make it to the end of the semester. As we start entering into the summer and thinking about, okay, the fall is going to look differently as well. What are some tools? What are some things that you guys have kind of uncovered in your time with Experience Institute that people might be able to point to? Because I think lots of folks are just looking for maybe not answers, but give me some direction of like, how should I be thinking about this if I'm a faculty member, right? And like, what I can control is the students I work with and the classes that I'm overseeing. Yeah, what have you learned from Experience Institute that you think might be transferable?
So one is like, be playful. Like there's a lot of seriousness right now. And I think sometimes people are looking for some levity. And that levity might come in how you handle your classes, like creating space for people to show off what's in their spaces, or creating space for some sort of physical movement in the middle of your classes. So add some levity. I know one of my favorite instructors right now is brought out all of his radio broadcasting stuff and is really thinking of like really playing up like a radio show because he's got
Mm.
40, 50 students on a Zoom call. And so, and like caller number 7, you know, like Devin, call, you know, and it's just like really having fun with it. And I think
Yeah.
there, you know, everything is serious, but it doesn't need to be serious all the time, you know? So I think some levity helps. I also put the ownership now squarely in the student's hands. Like we talk a lot about designing like self-design learning or student directed learning, and a lot of that comes with asking the questions around what students actually care about today. So like the deck of cards that you just brought out, like one of the first questions that we ask are like ask students to finish is I care about, and that is like think about challenges in your work, community, or life that make you feel frustrated. What do you hope to make a little better in the world? And just that question, like, you know, whenever you're thinking about students designing maybe a project that they're going to do in their own home or in their, like, you know, apart from you, that's a huge one. The other is, what do they love to make, right? So think about a time when you felt alive and joyful. What were you doing or making? As you think about the future, what do you want to be doing next? And then students can start thinking like, oh, man, I really do want to just spend a lot more time writing or researching, or I want to be in the lab, or I want to be building products. And the idea here is to find ways to let students design their own projects and experiences around the content that you're trying to teach. And so that's, I mean, and the deck takes you through a few others. There's no need to go through all of it right now. But the point is like, you know, add some levity, put the sort of student in the driver's seat if you haven't already. I mean, you have to, right, at this stage. And then, you know, like, and I'm seeing this a lot across companies as well, and just in general, you're hearing a lot more about this. Like, you're going to have to create some space for like mental health check-ins, and you don't need to be their counselor, you don't need to be their therapist, but I think just acknowledge a lot of what is happening right now is everyone is seeing a human side, a new layer, a new dimension of our lives, our homes, kids running in the backgrounds, you know, like noises left and right, like people like stuck in their bed, bad internet connections, the whole thing is happening. And at some point, just be kind enough to say, how's everybody doing? Write in the chat, like, give me one of 6 emotions, you know, happy, sad, angry, you move on, and let everyone just respond. And I know sometimes my students are just like totally dead on Zoom, like it is what it is, but use the chat, use the thumbs up or the clap, like do anything you can that is light enough, but also, you know, again, shares that there is there's a real human instructor on this end of things, and we're with you.
Totally. Yeah, I should have shown on the screen over here. My dog's paws were sliding under the door because he misses me so much during this call here. But he has since gone, so I think my wife has taken him away. But there's totally a personal dimension to this whole thing, right? Happening around us. So
totally. Yeah.
Well, so I want to be mindful of time. We're going to bring Monica on here in a little bit. But if there's one thing that the Sullivan network and community can do to support the efforts that you have going on, what might that be? Is there a new tool, a new thing to follow, like an article that you just stumbled across that you think everybody needs to go read? What's one thing that we as a network can rally behind with you?
I mean, you know, I love all my tools. Like, and I build those for educators and coaches and counselors. I would love to, you know, brainstorm or like find someone who's sort of in charge of that sort of college to career bridge, and talk to someone about like how do we help students navigate that bridge, whether that's for summer or gap years or life after college. And you know, so I don't know. I mean, obviously, go to what'sworthdoing.org. It's a fun product. You can check it out. But and especially if you're a teacher or if you're a student who's kind of just feeling like you need a fresh perspective on something. But yeah, I think I want to if I'm playing the long game on higher ed, the bridge between college to career and back and forth. You know, like out of college and then circling back in is the one that I want to be part of building.
Awesome. There was a group many years ago, I think it was called the Journey Network, but it was like Martin Kadee. I don't know if you know Martin at all.
Uh,
He's with Chaos Pilots over in
oh yeah,
yeah. I
yes,
think they're
yeah.
still running. I'm not quite sure.
I don't
Chaos
know, but
Pilots.
I remember Chaos Pilots. I loved that name.
Yeah, right. Actually, man, they are. That's so perfect right now. Right, navigating the unknown. Chaos Pilots.
I
Right. So how
know,
do you
so
navigate
great,
chaos?
so great.
Yeah, but Journey Network, they were like trying to create a series of unofficial learning nodes that you could like journey around the world and drop in, and you have sort
Yeah,
of like a certified coach educator that
yeah,
helps you like progress for the next step and then push you off back
yeah.
into your lane. Anyway, I'd
So
love
great,
to see learning take that shift as we kind of make
totally.
the next
Yeah,
steps.
yeah. Universities for nodes, man, that would be a
Yeah,
shift.
yeah.
Be a shift.
It'll be, I mean, if there's ever a time to shake things up, this seems to be it. So
I
we'll see
know,
what
I
happens
know.
with it.
That'd be
But
cool.
cool, man. Well, thank you for following along and jumping on here
Yeah,
today. So
yeah.
I
I
hope
think
you
the
have a
world
good
of
week.
you and your work, and I'm, in your corner, whatever you need, Spud.
Likewise. Well, enjoy your very very specific corner for the next couple
Yeah,
months so, in your space.
I will. I will. All right, go have a good rest of the day. See you guys.
Cool. See you, Victor. All right. So that was Victor again with the Experience Institute, doing awesome work. Go to their website. I know he's not going to sell his products as much as I will for him, so they're awesome. You can see I collect them over here, so go check them out. At least scroll through some of the stuff that they got going on there. Next that I want to bring on is a new friend, Monica. And Monica is with the Hudson Lab School. She's also with an organization called Pre-Hype and probably some other things that I'm not even sure what she's got going on in her neck of the woods. So we're going to invite Monica onto the call here. She is also very interested in this like project-based experiential learning, but probably coming at it from a slightly younger age. So we'll have her jump on here. There we go. Hey, friend, how are you?
Hi, how are you doing?
Let me pull it off so it's not two of your faces on the screen
Oh,
here.
that sounds great.
Cool. Well, thanks for taking time on a Friday to chat a little bit about what you got going on. You and I had a chance, was it last week, to catch up a little bit? Maybe?
So it could have been 3 years ago. I'm not totally sure.
I know. Time doesn't make any sense. I feel like between Monday and Wednesday, things go really slow, and then Thursday to Friday is insanely fast. So
Exactly.
who knows? We're on the
Yeah.
tail end of that sprint right now. But well, thank you for taking time. Wondering if you could give folks on the call a little bit of a teaser of who you are, what are you working on? I know you got a couple things on your plate. So what are some of the things that really excite you right now?
So I think just to start, I my background is in like early stage nonprofits and like building local communities, focused primarily on how artists can be change makers and what are the ways in which we can do that. I did that for a while and realized that I really wanted to be I've been looking at hyper local environments and building out like basically from the ground up from like one person to 5 to 10, which is like 10 people in a nonprofit is huge. And very, very different than for profit. But I've been doing that for a while and realized that where my interests really were how can we be implementing change on a larger scale? And so I worked in tech for a bit, in actually live video apps, which is now actually quite prevalent. So that I have that in my back pocket, and decided that I really wanted to go back to school for product design because that felt like here's a way in which I can like create scalable solutions. So if I'm thinking about like I want to do something in education, which is what I do, what are the ways that product can really scale that without like how can you actually build that infrastructure, because that's something that I was lacking. There's, as Victor was saying, when you're thinking about these things, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. MBA is one of them, product design is another, public policies, and there's a whole slew of things that you can do, but for me it was product design, and I think that really comes down to that hands-on learning, really that experiential learning that I was really, really interested in. Like I wanted to really get into a space in which I had the opportunity to like build what I wanted to build right away.
Mm.
And so from there, I ended up focusing a lot on education, specifically around how to teach sustainability through project-based learning. And for me, that comes as material literacy. It's something that I wish that everyone had the knowledge of a product designer, to understand exactly how things are made, exactly how messed up everything is, how we can change that, and why it's so important to reuse things, why it's so important to be thinking about how what we're buying and how we're buying it, and why recycling is not working, all of these types of things that when you do a deep dive into manufacturing processes becomes very, very evident to you, but not necessarily something that other people look at. And so I think that's really at like the heart of what I love, is that experiential learning, but also like teaching that observation that can really help with systems thinking. And so when I was in grad school, I happened to find this school that had just started, that called the Hudson Lab School, and they were looking for people for their summer program. And I emailed them and I was like, hey, I'm really interested in this. I really want to like build the curriculum, because I had been making educational products, and I've been working hands-on with teachers, but I realized that I really needed to go from like not just ethnography, but like actually doing it, because I was really at that point where I was just kind of stuck, and I was like, I need to be teaching.
Right.
Me talking endlessly to teachers, me doing site visits with teachers is just not quite doing it for me. And for some people it would, but for me it wasn't. And so I emailed them, and I was like, hey, it'd be really interested in like building a program. Would that be okay? And Kate, one of the two founders, who's incredible, was just like, yep, that sounds great. That all of that sounds really interesting. And so Hudson Lab School is based around project-based learning, and specifically, I think project-based learning in the way that maybe you and I think about it. I think project-based learning can have like a capital P, B, and L, especially with lower education, in which like you're given a prompt and then you go for it. We do more like emergent learning, and so that's really just looking at like how do you drive children, how do you drive anyone really to be curious and follow what they're passionate about, and then do a project around that, which is a little bit different when it comes to project-based learning.
Right.
And it happened to be like when I emailed them, the bio on my website was like almost verbatim what their mission statement was. So it's been a very good fit.
Right.
And so I built out a summer program that's based around large scale collaborative projects for students age 5 to 10. And so we build with like hardwood and
Cool
materials like that, screws, bolts, all that stuff. And it's really driven around like, I kind of give them a prompt. I really just like see where I teach them kind of like how to think about ideas and how to come up with ideas, as well as like what are the steps of building, and we just kind of go from there. There's a methodology to the madness, but I think part of where that comes into like material literacy is really looking at, we would deconstruct everything at the end of each unit and reuse the parts. And so like how can you really be teaching students, but really anyone, of like, okay, you just go forward, figure out what you want to do, go do it, reflect on it, and then know that that's not the end. Reflection is the end. You are still all this stuff that you've built that is going to have its own life. Like the life cycle is not over. And so yes, you can think of that in like material way, but I think that we can think about that with anything that we're doing, where it's like, if an action has been taken, there will be outcomes, there will be repercussions. And so that's what I've been really doing with the summer program. And then I've been building out like a sustainable maker curriculum that's year round, with the school right now, kind of right now, since like until a month ago.
Yeah. Right. Everybody's story ends with that until a month ago. Right.
And then I also work at a consultancy that's really just a network of entrepreneurs called Pre-Hype, which is they do venture development for helping each other and helping corporations and acting as an incubator. We do a lot of stuff, which is also super cool. But yeah, I can also talk about that.
Very cool. Yeah, you made a connection that I hadn't thought of, something that you and Victor both said of, right, in the sustainability world, there's a lot of talk around, circular economy, right, and looped systems. And Victor talking about, which I hadn't heard of it phrased like that before, but, right, learning as a loop, where you're popping out and then you're popping in. And I never made that connection before of, like, the importance of circular systems when thinking about it, which is interesting. So.
Yeah. Totally.
So I'm curious, right, you said up until a month ago. So how has COVID impacted the work that you're doing? I mean, everybody's talking right now about schools, right, and the impact that this is having on that. And so what are you guys seeing? How are you choosing to respond? What has inspired you in the response that you're seeing from other groups?
Yeah. So I think that, and I really, I prefer to only speak to like what our school is doing because I'm not working in like, I'm not working at like the superintendent's office for the Department of Education. So even though I like know what other people are doing, it's still really anecdotal evidence of what's going on. I know that I think that it seems like people really have like one of two responses with all of this. They're like really excited for all these opportunities to like redo everything, and then also just like mourning the fact that this structure is gone. And I think in particular with teachers, anyone that has that social aspect of their job is really like mourning something that was so like restorative to them. And so that it's, even though I think it's been amazing, I think I respect that it's hard. That said, like I'm in awe of what we're doing. It's incredible. I mean, we've gone from adapting by like just kind of like replicating of like, okay, how do we do everything that we were doing but do it at home, to really like translating and navigating into like, okay, school looks different. And school looks different in a way that like we're not going, even if we're not all engaged for 3 hours every day, it's that we are going to be on video. And so there is that accountability aspect. And that like, if you do need, talking about like self-care and like, if you do need a moment, what does that look like? And I think that I think in part it's been super interesting because the students have been kind of built for this in the way that like it's all about agency and self-directed learning and like and really being able to like take care of yourself and adapt. And so we've definitely seen that come to fruition, which is really exciting. On the other hand, yes, of course, it's all insane and crazy, and highs and lows and whatever. But I think that when it comes to navigating, it's really about just like checking in and seeing what are the alternative ways that we can build community, and making sure that that if something is not working, we just keep going. And so I know that like we now don't have school on Wednesdays because it was just too much for the teachers and the students. Being respectful of the fact that like the students are dealing with this and the teachers are also dealing with this. Like they're putting in 3 times more work than they normally do, and also need to like comic relief. I was with college students a few days ago, and I actually we got back from a break, and I like pulled up a physical product that like a toy that I had designed, because I was like, I need them to just like see something different. Okay, let me just show them something. Okay. You need that comic relief, and you want that that space from banality, I guess.
Right.
And so yeah, I think it's things like reimagining like how kids are going to do writing and how they're going to do collaborative work, and how to do things all digital. And I think that really, really is difficult with the youngest kids, because at that age developmentally, you like really, really need that socializing.
Right.
And so there's a lot of, design challenges and things like that, which is not, it's not new to them. But it's really, it is exciting to see that they're see the product of like a lot of work over the last few years. But on the other hand, it's hard to see kids down sometimes.
Right.
And then, and so that's really what we're doing from like with the HLS students, like the students that we would normally see every day. We're also right now doing online programming for, that's more non-academic. That's really just like focusing on building community around like knitting or building or any of those things. So like creating classes that are like 8 students or less that you could continue with for a month or for however long.
Right.
And so around something that's hands-on, something that like is engaging, but still having that space for socializing.
Yeah.
So doing a lot of things, but all within how do we do distance learning?
Right. So for folks who are just joining on, Monica is here with Hudson Lab School. You're also with Pre-Hype. I don't have a logo for Pre-Hype, unfortunately, at the moment. But I'm curious because you're giving us a little peek inside like the teacher world and sort of their mindset. And so because you kind of have one foot in both camps, right? So you have a foot in the education world working with, what was the age group? Like 5 to 10 or?
5 to 12.
5 to 12.
Yeah.
So working with education in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Versus then working in the entrepreneurship consulting space. I know you guys have, offices all over the world. And so trying to think the question here, are there skills that you're seeing really blossom on one side versus the other of like, whoa, these guys are responding in this way, whereas this crowd over here is responding differently? And are there things that are really transferable that you think of like, hey guys, the teachers have figured this out, right? Take Wednesdays off. Entrepreneurs, you need to like chill because sometimes you're working way too hard. Like, what are those? I'm just spitballing there, but like, what are some of the things that you're seeing in both camps and how they cross pollinate between the two?
Yeah, no, I think that's such a good question. And I think something that teachers are really good at is really being able to, because there's such an emotional component, to really have to check in with themselves and check in with their students and know that like, oh, hey, we need a little bit of we need like a little bit of a break. We need to do this. And that's something that like teachers are uniquely set up for. The rest of us not. Maybe at one point we were sometimes. And so I think that really has been kind of the most inspiring, because I think any entrepreneur will do this naturally and out of excitement, but I think anyone is doing it out of excitement or panic of just like, okay, everything's new. What do I do? And again, it can be excitement or panic, but either way, you're in a crisis mode. And so, in my mind, I was like, okay, I can go work on that. I can work every day. I no longer have a commute to go launch that business that I wanted. And like, I'm still trying to do all those things. But it's knowing that although it is a new world and we do have to restructure everything, knowing that you still have to maintain your expectations. And I think that's something that teachers do really, really well, because it doesn't matter if you have a lesson plan prepared and you've done it 50 times, everything could go wrong because there are more clouds in the sky than the last time you did it. It's just like everything is just everything's up in the air because you are dealing with people, and regardless of what you're doing, you're always dealing with people. And so I think that's something that like corporations and entrepreneurs can really take from teachers, of just like, take a moment to breathe and remember that you're not going to get everything done. Yeah, I think so.
No, I totally.
Yeah. I think about it. I think about
Yeah. So this is sort of jumping gears a little bit, but
Yeah.
kind of diving back into your story of how you got to where you are now.
Yeah.
I know we work with a lot of students in the Sullivan community who are trying to figure out their place, right? I know I care about this type of individual that I want to work with, right? I want to work with students in the 5 to 12 range or something. And they're now at a place where their entire path that they thought they had laid out, right? Normal 4-year college or whatever their path was, it's totally, the rug's been pulled out. And so what would your advice be based on what your own path was of if somebody has a really clear idea of like, this is where I want to go, this is the type of, you know, impact I want to make in the world, and now all of a sudden my career path has been yanked out from underneath me, what should people be thinking about? Like, how have you navigated moments like that in your own life? Because you seem to balance between a lot of different worlds, and so you've
Oh, yeah.
learned something there. I can tell, but I'm curious what that is for you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in part that comes out of, I think that even if you feel like you have a career path, like you don't. And so coming out of, it's almost, again, not to like just talk about the silver lining, because it also is good to just reflect on the fact that we are in a pandemic, but the silver lining of having your 4-year plan thrown out the window is that like you realize that that actually wasn't a plan in the first place, because you go the and I only say this, and like no disrespect to higher education, like no disrespect to, I hope this is not coming off as disrespectful. I think like a lot of millennials at least were definitely told like go follow your passion, go do that, but not necessarily given the strategy to do that, but just like, oh, go to college and go study whatever you want, but not go make the change you want to see in the world type of thing. And so I was an art history major. That seemed interesting. I knew I wanted to do community engagement work. That happened to work out. But I think it's really knowing that in school you are doing a lot of like looking at things from multiple perspectives, looking at systems thinking. Like that is something that you're being thoughtful. And so knowing that what you're doing can cross to whatever you want to do with a lot of practice and a lot of work, but really think about not, okay, I'm really good at science, but like I'm really good at analysis. And thinking about is if I want to get into this field, let me see if I can, again, like what I love what Victor was saying. I've definitely said that advice before of like, go ask someone if you could shadow them for a week, or you can take something off someone's plate, rather than being like, oh, well, they have an internship program, let me go do that. But yeah, just really just like thinking about, okay, how can I help in a way that's not going to bother them, and it's not going to be more work for them, and getting in there, really getting into it. I feel like it's really assessing like exactly what you're saying of like what do you want to do, and from there just being really proactive of like how do you go navigate that, and also not being upset if someone doesn't email you back, because it could be 1,000 things in general, let alone right now. And right now it could be like 1,001 things, and knowing that all businesses are handling things very differently. I know that everyone I know who works in social services is, it's like a bomb went off. And so that might not be the space that you can help. And so thinking about like, okay, if you want to work in social services and those are organizations that are too strapped right now to even think about another person, what are adjacent places that I can go look, and I can start to navigate that way. So thinking about like, if this path is not working, can you then find 12 others?
Yeah,
like pandemic or not.
Right. You said something earlier about even like the structure of how your curriculum and stuff in your school is designed that really struck me, of this idea of follow your curiosity. And I think that is something that oftentimes people talk about, follow your passion. And passion is this where I don't even know what I'm passionate about, right? And I'm like doing this work. I've been doing it for 10, 15 years. Such an elusive term, and it's so much easier to substitute the word curiosity for passion, of like, forget about follow your passion, just follow your curiosity and see where that leads. And you'll probably discover something that you're passionate about.
I've never put that together. I think that's so spot on. Where follow your passion is just like, okay, well then if you're not an Olympic swimmer, do you fail? Like what's
right? Exactly. I'm just
sorry, my tripod just went bonkers. But yeah, thinking about it of just like, oh, okay, I'm curious about that. I'm curious of like that type of interaction or that type of relationship, that type of and how can I go figure out how to get more experience in that?
Totally. Yeah. I know time is coming to an end, and Instagram likes to kick us off at the end of an hour. So if there's one simple thing the Sullivan Community Network can do to support things that you have going on, what would that be? Or one tip or trick that you want to pass on to the community?
Well, one thing that would help is that we are expanding our online offerings, which is really exciting. And so if you know of any really awesome teachers, or really anyone who's a really curious person, it could be Morse code, or it could be Legos, like just anyone who is curious and likes to engage with people, particularly children. Please pass along the word, and or just send an email to hudsonlabschool.com. And I think when it comes to advice, I think something that's really worked for me, and something that I've been trying to promote with friends that are not doing that well, is again thinking about the innovative ways that you can form community. And so knowing that, like, checking in every day to be like, did you read the news? Yeah, it's sad. It may not be as nourishing as like playing a game or like doing a book club, or thinking about like, are the conversations you're having, or the interactions that you're having nourishing to you? Because right now we're also trained everything needs to be nourishing. So really being mindful of what you're doing, and knowing that there is a lot of opportunities to build what you want to build right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out on a Friday. It was good getting to hear a little bit more of your story on here. So.
Yeah, no, this was really fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we will be in touch, I'm sure. And thanks so much for jumping on.
All right. Bye.
See ya. Cool. So Victor, Monica, talking about what's worth doing. If you caught the part with Victor, what is worth doing? I think a good answer to that is probably what Monica is leaving us, of something that you're curious about. Go follow that thing that you're curious about, and that's probably what's worth doing. So if you want to jump on more of these calls, we have another one coming up next week. We go live Wednesday at noon and Friday at 5. We've got some good friends lined up for the next couple of weeks, so be sure to check us out. All these videos are posted live on our website at sullivanfdn.org/webinar. If you want to check out more, we will see you next week. Have a good weekend, friends.